Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sir Hunt on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 30th of April 2025. And as the month of April comes to an end, the first quarter is out of the way, and now we're getting ready for the real weather coming up, the late spring and early summer. Hope everyone finds a way to stay warm once those weather temperatures start to change, because it's going to get real sticky, especially in this part of the town and wherever parts of the world you're living in. Going to get right down to it here a little bit. Just a FYI, for those who are watching live on the X and Facebook platforms, if you missed any part of it, you can catch the replays on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as the show now reaches bigger and more significant platforms as time proceeds. Now let's get right down to it. It starts with the news out of Major League Baseball. Of course, the ongoing debate that's been going for 3 decades, not just here in Cincinnati, but throughout all of Major League Baseball, is, of course, the pending situation with the late Pete Rose. You know the story here. Thrown out of baseball because of whatever the heck it is he did. And basically, it was double down and triple down until recently that the President, Donald Trump, basically wondered what is going on. Called on Commissioner Rob Manfred. They had a meeting about it. Still, nobody knows what's going to happen. Question I have is, what do you accomplish out of it now that Pete Rose is no longer on planet Earth? Because he said before he passed, a couple of days he was in an assisted care home, a live video chat with someone out there in Las Vegas. Basically said, if you're not going to put me in the Hall of Fame while I'm alive, what sense does it make you're going to put me in after I leave this earth? And he's right. I mean, if you want to give it to him as a consolation prize, have at it. Of course, it's a lifetime ban, however you want to diagnose it, and he's no longer living. So I guess now it makes sense for baseball to take the low road and uplift a ban that makes no sense at this point, simply because it is what baseball is. And we know the type of commissioner Rob Manfred has been in recent years for the sport of baseball. Not necessarily all that great, just ruined that product. And of course, everyone's won Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame forever and ever. Of course, I said all along, especially to the day he passed, he's a polarizing figure, not just here in Cincinnati, but in all of baseball and maybe in all of professional sports. Because whenever the situation comes up, the opinion is divided like right down the middle, and basically sparks fly all over the place for whatever reason. I mean, you can't deny what he did on the field. I mean, the 4,250 career hits. Of course, you could forget when he tore down Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati back in '85 when he got 4192 and broke Ty Cobb's all-time hit record. That's going to be with his name attached forever and ever. Everybody knows this. I mean, and of course, the whole debate with the Hall of Fame, I don't partake in it simply because what good does it do at this point? As Pete Rose said, he's no longer with us. Doesn't make any sense. I understand it from that point of view, but you know, what we're going to get trying to uplift the banner for someone who's no longer with us. I understand what Trump was trying to say. I get now Manfred is going to look into it, but where do we get out of this? If you want to place him in the Hall of Fame, that's fine. But what is accomplished out of this for someone who, even despite all the shortcomings and transgressions that he had, maybe he should have been in while he was alive? I mean, he had 3 decades from when this ban was placed in, I would say, 89 to the time he passed September of last year to do it. Now you're going to wait till months after he passes away to bring up something like this sensational, where it's going to create sparks all over the place and divide the baseball community, especially Cincinnati, which I said all along, he's that polarizing. So if you're going to go down that route, have at it. But the question is, what sense does it make? I mean, if you want to honor a guy, why don't you just honor the guy while he's alive? I mean, we know Bud Selig had a personal vendetta with Pete Rose when he was a commissioner. He basically admitted it on the Dan Patrick show not too long ago. Well, that's because Bud Selig is a coward. So that's where we're at right now. We'll see where this one goes. But as Pete Rose said, what sense does it make at this point? We'll be talking more about this later, because it's just strange that this is being brought up. Now, a lot of people called this happening, rightfully so, yours truly being one of them, because baseball had this grudge for the longest time on Pete Rose and still refused to say why. And now he's no longer here with some of the people who booted him out of baseball. Okay. But where are we going with on this after he's gone? I mean, are you going to try and ignite a fire in the franchise that mainly the Cincinnati Reds, where he played for the prime years of his career? I mean, I don't know how good that does. And people are still calling for this guy to be in the Hall of Fame after he passes. That part I'm still trying to figure out. I get it, but it's also weird in the same sentence. Now to my regular programming involves the NFL. We know what happened in Atlanta. The son of the defensive coordinator, the prank to Shedeur Sanders, comes out that now the Falcons organization and the defensive coordinator, who some way somehow obtained the phone number of Shedeur Sanders, the organization was fined $250,000, and it was $100,000 for the defensive coordinator. This is softer than cotton tissue, okay? You're playing a prank on a nationally televised event that's watched not just across the United States, but probably globally on a major platform involving a premier figure that everyone knows is going to be, or at least perception-wise, the talk of the NFL draft, which he was. Everybody knew this, and yet you resorted to this particular childish act by grown men who are older than me to act like this. It was one of the most despicable, disrespectful, and disgusting things you could do. Everybody's saying the punishment was stiff. It wasn't harsh enough. But it's symbolic of the Atlanta Falcons franchise, who finds ways to get in their own way on some of the most despicable things you could possibly do. We go back to drafting Michael Vick. What happened to him at the end? 2-year prison sentence because he loves killing dogs. Who can forget what happened about a decade ago when they funneled fake crowd noise into their Georgia Dome because they weren't getting the particular noise out of the crowd? What do? They bring some fabricated sound and make noise out of it, and they were finding draft picks out of that. Of course, the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones experiment at 28-3 in the Super Bowl. We know the story with that. And of course, who can forget what happened last offseason when they botched the entire quarterback free agency situation, where they signed Kirk Cousins to that crazy contract after the ACL tear in Minnesota, and draft Michael Penix Jr. on top of it just to tick off Kirk Cousins. It's always something with this franchise. It's always in its own way. It's always doing something that it shouldn't. And now here we are again, doing something that it shouldn't. Biggest luck I was, they didn't lose any draft picks. I think they should have lost at least one or two. Because I said this punishment that was handed out to the Falcons was softer than a poke on the wrist. Forget slap on the wrist. This was softer than a poke on the wrist. And that is why this punishment was as soft as it was. I mean, why would you, as grown adults, and we're talking about Arthur Blank, who's old enough to be my dad, for crying out loud, would act in a way that teenagers do to people? And the question I also have is, how was this phone number obtained by the Atlanta Falcons? To pull this kind of act, to use a son of a member of your own franchise and its own coaching staff to pull this sort of act off the way you did, it was despicable, it was insulting, and it was disgraceful. And I don't care what it is, whatever year it is. We're in 2025, and if you're older than me, and if you're playing pranks on anybody, you've never grown up in this walk of life. I am not sorry, because it is the truth. Now, as far as what goes on in the future, now they're talking about FaceTime video calls. They should have done this many, many years ago, because now with technology is as it is. That is why we should have gone to this a long time ago, and none of this would ever happen. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that changes moving forward, because this was a despicable act, and basically everyone got off light. The draft pick should have been lost, or Arthur Blank should have been stripped of his ownership, because he was probably the driving force behind it. I wouldn't be surprised. But whatever it is, the phone number was obtained and used the wrong way, completely misused, and we get the stature of Shedeur Sanders. We know what happened to him afterwards. That's another story. But what the Atlanta Falcons pulled off with this is an act of despicable disgracefulness, an act of cowardice, and an act of childishness that there's really no room for it And for them to get off as light as they did doubles down the fact that it was softer than cotton tissue. You got away with one with this time, Atlanta. You got away with one. Now, of course, there was rumors flying around that other teams got phone pranks here, phone pranks there. Nobody knows the details of it. But this one was caught on camera, and if that's the best you could possibly do, shame on you, NFL. You just made yourself look like a bunch of morons again. Why do we have people older than me playing childish pranks on other adults? I don't get it. Now to Baltimore, and a couple key pieces here. They pick up the fifth-year option on Kyle Hamilton, which is no surprise, but they don't with the center Tyler Lindenbaum. Of course, it's causing craziness all over the waves of the internet, especially among the AFC North Twitter, mainly the two teams in Ohio, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Let's start with this. The tag of the fifth-year option, had they picked it up on Lindenbaum, was going to be $23.4 million, $5 million more than what any team has for their center, or the highest paid, which I believe now it's Cam Jurgens of Philadelphia. Also probably up there is Creed Humphrey of Kansas City. Everybody just chill for a minute because Tyler Lindenbaum's not going anywhere. They already said they're going to work on a deal to get something done long-term, which I'm sure will happen here at some point. They're always going to talk about hold out this, hold out that. That's not happening. Tyler Lindenbaum, since they drafted him in the first round of 2022 NFL draft and the trade with Arizona that sent them Hollywood Brown, been a fixture as a center for the Baltimore Ravens. They know it. He knows it. The coaching staff knows it. I wouldn't even go crazy over it. It's not worth going crazy over. Remember, we had this contract saga a couple years back with Lamar Jackson when he was a free agent. We know they finally worked out a deal there. So I'm expect everybody, including myself, should expect the same thing to happen here with both Tyler Lindenbaum and Kyle Hamilton, because they're fixtures with what they do over there in Baltimore. Everyone needs to just relax. It's going to work out. And speaking of franchises that can't get out of their own way, first I just talked about Atlanta. Now here we go with Cleveland. They signed the malcontent receiver Dionte Johnson, who couldn't cut it in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, or Houston. Now he's going to try and cut it in Cleveland. It's a synopsis of what's happened with the Cleveland Browns franchise since the fiasco with Deshaun Watson and that trade in 2022. They can't seem to get out of their own way when it comes to being the center of embarrassment and the center of the laughingstock of the entire NFL. And here we go again. Everybody knows the story of Dionte Johnson. He couldn't cut it in Pittsburgh. Baltimore sat him down for reasons, really it was disciplinary reasons, because Dionte Johnson thinks he's bigger than anything else. He was a brief stint in Houston. That didn't last a minute. Goes back to Baltimore. Basically, he's gone back to Baltimore as a way to try and teach Dionte Johnson some discipline. That didn't work out because Dionte Johnson is who Dionte Johnson is. And at the end, now he's going to the Cleveland Browns, which we should call them the Cleveland Clowns, because of how that fan base is, the way they were supporting a sexual predator in Deshaun Watson for 3 years, how they were supporting players with all kinds of wild stuff that goes on. Let's find out actually one of their offensive linemen just assaulting a woman. That should tell you something about the Cleveland Browns franchise and the fan base. And now you add a malcontent wide receiver in Dionte Johnson to put on your roster, which I don't know if he's going to make it. Another case of the Cleveland Browns just not being able to get out of their own way. Always wanted to be all about the theatrics. We know the theatrics of the 2025 NFL draft, which they started out good. They had a good first couple of days with the defensive tackle Mason Gobert, whatever, I can't remember his name, to the running back. But then, of course, day 3, when they drafted both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, they just want to be the talk of the town for the wrong reasons, per usual, and their fan base is okay with it. That's why the fan base and the ownership and the players are going to finish dead last in the AFC North again, and they're going to be the laughingstock, and nobody, including myself, will feel sorry for them. No wonder why year in and year out, Baltimore and Pittsburgh fans just let them have it. Just keep on letting them have it, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, because they wish they were you, but they can't be you. You both over there in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, respectively, know this. And speaking of fan bases who still can't stop making fools of themselves, right here in Cincinnati, again, I wake up this morning and flooded all over my news feeds and even some of my old crop videos I had from the end of last season. We're still having the same conversation of what happened week 18. If everybody knows the story here, they were supposed to, they were 9-8, 20 with the last playoff spot. Came down to a game, Kansas City at Denver. Kansas rests all their starters. Denver bum rushes them 34-0 to go get the last playoff spot over Cincinnati. Had Denver lost it, it would have been the tie. But since he had the irrelevant regular season win, which would have gotten them in. But here we go again. The Bengals fans just can't seem to let that day go. I told you from the get-go, had you won week 1 against the Jacoby Brissett-led New England Patriots, that's not an issue. You still want to talk about what goes on in Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't even thinking about you, not even Denver for that matter. Actually, they moved on from you after you beat them week 17. But you still want to bring up what took place week 18 as if the world just fell on your face. Actually, I'm happy the world fell on your face. That's why, as a Bengals fan myself, I was celebrating you guys getting eliminated because you guys were the reason why I was celebrating. Not because of the team. Players deserve better. It's the fans, the super fans, and the media people in Cincinnati who got exactly what they deserve because what happened on week 18, they didn't know how to conduct themselves like adults. And as a result, they sat home and it was a thing of beauty. If you don't take care of your own business from the get-go to the end, you get what you asked for in the end. The best thing about the week 18 shebang that took place with Kansas resting all of their starters and getting their 5th and 6th stringers bum rushed by Denver 34-0. Reason why it's the best thing that happened to Cincinnati fans that day, it gives them something to think about, gives them something to whine about of a topic that's irrelevant because it hides the fact that when they no-showed week 1 against the tanking New England Patriots with Jacoby Brissett, the season was over at that point. It overshadows that because now Bengals fans and their super fans and their media people over here want something to whine about. They just got it. They can finally start whining about whatever they want. Doesn't matter to me because I said I'm here and they're over there. And I said all along, when you lost week 1 to the Jacoby Brissett-led New England Patriots, the season was over. No matter how you slice it. I don't care about that game against the Chargers where Evan McPherson missed 2 field goals. I don't care about the home loss at Pittsburgh because, all that was moot. You were 7-1 against teams with losing records, but it was the one loss, week 1 to the New England Patriots, that bit you in the end. I don't care about what happened at that point. You let tanking teams come onto your own field and punk you the way the Patriots did to you in Cincinnati week 1 of the 2024 season. It's over. Because early games set the tone for what's going to happen the rest of the way. That's why some of the better teams get off to the fast starts. Look what happened to the 2 Super Bowl teams of the season, Kansas and Philadelphia. They got off the tracks running, and they met in the Super Bowl. You guys in Cincinnati can whine and cry about it all you want. You can accuse the Chiefs of quitting all you want. That's not going to do you any good. You can accuse the Chiefs of anything you want. But as I said, the New England Patriots weren't afraid of you week 1. And if they weren't going to be afraid of you, nobody else was. Forget about it. The season is over. Quit whining about what happened at the end of the season. It's 2025. Worry about actually fixing the team to get you guys back into the playoffs instead of worrying about the Chiefs supposedly quitting in your eyes because it's not going to get you anywhere. It's done. It's over. Time to move on. I swore at the end of last season I was going to have more topics about this. It seemed like they want me to talk about it. There, I gave them their 5 minutes of fame. Now to some wild scene last night in the NBA in Indiana. This was, I guess, Giannis Antetokounmpo getting into the face of the father of the stand-up Pacer guard Tyrese Haliburton. And a whole wild scene took place toward the end of the game between those 2 teams. Well, let me start with this. It's the 3rd straight time Giannis Antetokounmpo has been eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. And if you still think he's a superstar player after that, please get checked for CTE because he's not. Superstar players don't lead their teams to first-round exits in the playoffs, regardless of what the reason is. But as far as this incident goes, Giannis Antetokounmpo did say something point on. People need to learn how to be humble winners. And there's complaints about the father of Tyrese Haliburton getting involved when he shouldn't. And when it got to that point, Giannis Antetokounmpo felt the need to defend himself. I get it. Maybe one of those things where you need to tell Giannis to just step away and whatever. But it doesn't help that when the father of Tyrese Haliburton decided to throw himself in the mix, then you have the crazy scene that took place in Indiana last night. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo is right. You need to learn how to be a humble winner and stop throwing things in their face. Of course, there was another melee where Giannis Antetokounmpo had his hand on somebody's head. I can't think of what it was. And then that escalated. But the big picture view here, ever since they won, the Milwaukee Bucks, led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, won a lockout shortened championship in 2021. I believe it was like a 60-some-odd game season. He's been a failure. Last 3 years, first-round exits. And on top of that, he supposedly didn't like how Adrian Griffin was coaching the Bucks when they had the best record in the league at the time. Got him fired, brought in Doc Rivers, and he does a little showboat dance the day after the Bucks fired Adrian Griffin in their next home game. And it's been egg on the face of the Milwaukee Bucks ever since. Don't say we warned you. Now they're talking about Giannis leaving Milwaukee. Have at it. I mean, you got your paper championship when you got the shortened season. But as far as Giannis Antetokounmpo goes, the thought of him being an elite player is over. Elite players don't lead their teams to first-round exits like the way Giannis Antetokounmpo has had done the last 3 seasons. Pretty much plain and simple. I mean, if you want to try a burger market, have at it. But 3 consecutive first-round losses for a player who's supposed to be a generational talent or an elite talent like him, inexcusable. Speaking of elite talents, of course, later tonight, it is Game 5 between Minnesota and LA Lakers. I think the Lakers are going to find a way to win this game, but I'm going to put it like this. If the Lakers don't win this game tonight and they're eliminated on their home court of all teams, the Minnesota Timberwolves, that Luka Doncic trade on their end is going to be as bad as it is on Dallas's end. Because there's no excuse when you have supposedly 2 generational talents like LA has to find yourselves down 3-1 against, of all teams, the Minnesota Timberwolves with the home court advantage. It's just a definition of pathetically inexcusable for that to happen. How do you let this happen? I mean, in the 2 of the wins in Minnesota, they got out-clutched by, of all players, Naz Reid. Not Anthony Edwards. Naz Reid. Think about it. I mean, one of the games he outscored both LeBron and Luka in the fourth quarter by himself. Now, nothing against Naz Reid, I think he was a 6th Man of the Year winner at one point, or at least a 6th Man of the Year candidate. But if you're a generational talent like Luka Doncic and LeBron James are, in that fourth quarter, nobody is going to outclutch you. You should never let that happen. It's just a shame. I mean, we went through this with LeBron in the 2011 finals with Wade and Bosh when he got outclutched by Jason Terry and Dirk Nowitzki. We're going through this again. But I said I think the Lakers will win tonight, but God forbid if something goes wrong and they're eliminated on their home court to the Minnesota Timberwolves of all teams. On their end, just as bad it is on Dallas's end when they made the deal, it might be as bad, if not worse, on LA's end. Because you didn't get all the assets for Luka Doncic to be eliminated in the first round by the Minnesota Timberwolves. If that happens tonight, it's going to be a deep explanation that's going to be heavily required, and it's going to require honest explanations. Because I know how those fans in LA are. They're as bad as the ones here in Cincinnati. It's like nothing can go wrong. There better be an honest explanation if you allow the Minnesota Timberwolves to come on your court in Game 5 and knock you out of the playoffs with LeBron and Luka on your roster. There's going to have to be some serious explaining to do if that happens. I don't think it will, but if it does, which is possible, somebody's going to have to explain it. Honestly. Now, before I proceed into the end, a little bit of in a not so memorable moment that took place 30 some odd years ago overseas in a tennis match that featured the one-time standout Monica Seles, where out of nowhere, a crazed fan of Steffi Graf's out of nowhere stabs her right in between the shoulder blades in the middle of the match. I mean, it's bad enough we had fanfare the way it is, but before fanfare got as crazy as it was today, I mean, you can trace back to the malice of the palace of the wild game of Detroit in the NBA. It was what happened 32 years ago when Monica Seles got stabbed right in between the shoulder blades, and the Sports Illustrated cover of the feared and terrified look of Monica Seles when that happened was all I needed to know. Because that terrified her so much, she had to she did away with tennis for quite a while, never could get back to that level. Of course, people follow women's tennis at that point. She was in the middle of a rivalry with the one-time standout Steffi Graf, battling for the top spot in the women's number one ranking. The fan was so crazed up on wanting to see Steffi Graf as a number one rated women's tennis player in the world at that point, resorted to this. And the sad thing was the guy only got a 2-year suspended sentence. Think about it. He only got a 2-year suspended sentence for this particular heinous act. And the audio was there like days after. You could hear the screams and even the outlandish scream of Monica Seles when she got stabbed right in between the shoulder blades, and how Monica Seles was screaming on the audio. And you see the terrified look on her face on that Sports Illustrated cover when it happened. Probably one of the more eye-popping things Sports Illustrated ever had on their covers. I mean, I could point to a buttload of things that they've had over the years during the Sports Illustrated era when Sports Illustrated was all about sports. But one of the more eye-popping covers, maybe one of the more mind-blowing ones, was that look on Monica Seles' face after she got stabbed, and the fear in her eyes, fearing for her life when that fan inexcusably and disgustingly stabbed her right in between the shoulder blades. And not literal either. I mean, really stabbed her. That's crazy. But it goes to show the wild fanfare that can take place all over the world. I know now extra precautions have been taking place. There's now, of course, devices and cameras that can see such a thing. So, of course, fan behavior is going to be a topic of all sporting events all over the place. I mean, I live in Cincinnati, what's the kingpin of them all. Go back to the 2015 playoff loss of Pittsburgh. You guys can read that for yourselves, what the Bengals fans did on that night. But the fan behavior, I can point to this particular night day, that something was going to be changing in terms of fan behavior, because what happened on that day to Monica Seles on that tennis match was way unforeseen. Now extra security measures are now taking place, gratefully and rightfully so. So nothing like this ever happens again. Crazy thing is, with all of these 30 for 30 and all these sports documentaries that have taken place, I haven't seen one on Monica Seles. I think that tells you just how much, maybe you would call, I don't want to say damage, but how scarring this was to her to not be able to talk about it, because it probably did more than people thought. I mean, just all because over a competitive tennis match. I mean, back then, one of the premier sports, individual sports, was women's tennis, when Monica Seles and Steffi Graf were battling for the top spot all the time in Wimbledon, or some of the bigger tennis matches across the world. And for this to happen, just despicable. But just thank goodness Monica Seles survived, and hopefully she's doing all right. It was just a terrible day in not just in the history of tennis, but in the history of all sports, to have it happen in the middle of a sporting event. Now to the historical perspective in the world of boxing. The first one took place over almost 49 years ago. This took place in Landover, Maryland. It was Muhammad Ali in one of his fights after the Thriller in Manila, successfully defending his championship against the crafty and defensive-minded Jimmy Young on a closer than expected unanimous decision. Muhammad Ali later admitted he took Jimmy Young lightly. Jimmy Young felt he won the fight. Really, the story of this one was Jimmy Young was maybe a little too defensive for his own good, because he was a very sound defensive heavyweight for that time. But when you face a guy like Ali, who was, I think it was the second fight after that brutal fight in the Philippines between him and Joe Frazier, for find a way to win this fight was pretty interesting. But how this fight was fought was not necessarily all that watchable. But maybe this was a point where people could say maybe that downturn of Ali was starting to begin, because he had that some brutal fights throughout his career. Maybe the most brutal one was what took place will be 50 years ago, October 1st, in the Philippines, when he fought Joe Frazier in that give and take fight where both guys were flirted with death that night. So Ali comes back and fights a crafty Jimmy Young, who worked his way up to one of the top contender spots in one of the governing bodies. Ali gets a decision. Jimmy Young felt he won the fight, but maybe Young's moment came a little more than a year later when he beat Big George Foreman in San Juan, Puerto Rico, to send Foreman into that 10-year hiatus. I mean, Young had a respectable wins in his respectable career, but outside of the Foreman win, doesn't really have much to think about. Granted, the title shot against Ali was deserved, but he wasn't going to do anything with the way he fought against him, because he was a slickster, very defensive-minded, but maybe he was a little too defensive-minded when he fought Ali. There's some people who thought he was robbed. From the video footage I've seen, I thought Ali did enough to win, maybe slightly more than enough, but it wasn't the wipeouts the judges had it. Maybe that's what the outrage is, because we see it in the sport of boxing where judges fights to our eyes look close, but the judges have it wider. Also, in contrast, fights to us look like it's one-sided, but then the judges have it closer than how we see it. There's a common thing here. But it was 49 years ago today at Landover, Maryland. Muhammad Ali, in the second fight after the thriller in Manila, found a way to successfully defend his title against Jimmy Young in a unanimous decision. Got the third fight with Norton, had the tough fight with Ernie Shavers, and then the back-to-back fights with Leon Spinks in 1978. After the second fight, became the only legit lineal three-time heavyweight champion in boxing history. And his history, as you know, forever secure for as long as we have a planet Earth that exists. Long live the great Muhammad Ali. And another moment that took place 36 years ago today. And I bring this one up because everyone is so obsessed over how Mike Tyson used to score highlight reel knockouts over less than stellar opposition. Maybe the most stellar knockout of 1989 took place at the Scope in Norfolk, Virginia. It was Pernell Whitaker defending his title against the unbeaten number one contender Louie Lomeli, in basically a showcase homecoming fight for Sweet Pea, which we know the Scope will ever be the house that Pernell Whitaker built during his time as the lightweight and welterweight champ and the best fighter in the world pound for pound. And he showed a case here. This was a case of the perfect punch on the perfect spot that delivered the perfect result. Louie Lomeli coming forward, Pernell Whitaker timing him with the jab. Louie Lomeli tried to set up the left hook, let this guard down, chin up, the perfectly placed straight left hand out of the southpaw stance, and Louie Lomeli is flat on his face in this sleep next to the fireplace position to where the guy wants to sleep. Perfectly placed punch by Whitaker put Lomeli down. Lomeli gets up and is wobbled all over the place. And about 10 to 15 seconds later, a short rally and the fight is stopped, and Pernell Whitaker wins a third-round knockout. There are people that, for the longest time, called a boxer like Pernell Whitaker boring. If he wanted to score a highlight reel knockout, he could do it. And he did it 36 years ago against Louie Lomeli. He did it on August 12th, 1990, when he put Juan Azario on his face. He did it in a tune-up fight against a fighter named Ben Baez, where basically the fight starts a jab, straight left. Baez is down and out 30 seconds in. Didn't have the most overwhelming knockout ratio, but if he wanted to score a highlight reel knockout on you, he could do it. You can forget the comeback from behind knockout against Diobelis Hurtado in 1997. Hurtado had the fight under control. The one straight left hand, and Diobelis Hurtado is arched backwards in the middle of the top ropes. Pernell Whitaker had underrated power, but it wasn't more about loading it up and hitting you hard as you could. It was about hitting you in the right spot at the right time to deliver the right result. He did that a few times in his career. The reason why the people don't talk about that as much is because of the craft of his career, perfecting ring generalship, ring mastery out of the southpaw stance, the art of getting hit and not getting hit, the art of the sweet science. That was Pernell Whitaker in his day. Then, of course, in 1989, it was the middle of his run to the Fighter of the Year by Ring Magazine. And of course, a year later, he became the undisputed lightweight champ in the three-belt era. Went on to win a world title at 140, 147, and 154. Ascended to the distinction of the best fighter pound for pound after he beat James Buddy McGirt at Madison Square Garden on March 6, 1993. 1984 Olympic gold medalist. History is secure. So for people who think he doesn't know how to score knockouts, he did it 36 years ago today to Louie Lomeli, and Louie Lomeli never recovered from this because that left hand that put it on his chin and put Louie Lomeli in the go to sleep on the floor in front of the fireplace position that night in Norfolk, Virginia. That was it. He could do whatever he wanted to. He just wanted to be the master of the craft, all about the art of the sweet science. Wanted to be one of his own. But if he wanted to put you on your butt in a highlight reel fashion, he sure did it. Did it quite a few times. Not a lot of knockouts for the amount of wins that he had, but the ones he scored, they were highlight reel style. Pull up the footage. You'll see for yourself, especially what he did to Louie Lomeli 36 years ago. Too many people are so crazy about highlight reel knockouts and think Mike Tyson was the one that did it. There are other guys that did it too, probably more sensationally than Mike Tyson ever did. I mean, it wasn't about, loading up and just being a bull in a china shop like Mike Tyson was. It was about the perfection of the punch on the sweet spot and delivering the sweet result to your body, and that was all she wrote. That's what guys like Pernell Whitaker did. But we get crazed up over knockouts so much, over violent knockouts. People forget there's also an art to what the sport of boxing was. I mean, even Sugar Ray Leonard had highlight reel knockouts. Look at that left hook that flattened Davy Boy Green once upon a time. Or even that left hook that floored Donnie Lalonde the first of the two times he did in 88. He knew how to deliver one highlight reel one-punch knockouts. What Tommy Hearns did to Roberto Duran in 84. That perfectly placed 1-2. Roberto Duran's on the facing the canvas, ass in the air type position. That's a highlight reel knockout. Just because highlight reel knockouts are not Mike Tyson doesn't mean they weren't great knockouts. There was a lot of great knockouts all over the place. That's actually maybe the more modern one perfectly was when Juan Manuel Marquez caught Manny Pacquiao coming in with that right hand in the end of the fourth fight. And Manny Pacquiao is the "Are you okay, Manny" position on his face with his ass in the air. That's a highlight reel knockout. There are better highlight reel knockouts than anything Mike Tyson ever did. I mean, you guys are so, I've always said, the back end of the 80s, when it comes to Mike Tyson fans, brainwashed the sport so much to where everybody thinks because Mike Tyson couldn't score a knockout, fight's not worth watching. There were fighters greater than Mike Tyson. There were fighters who delivered better knockouts than Mike Tyson because he did it against better fighters and bigger events. I said, that's why I've always had a beef with Mike Tyson fans, because they got so suckered into what he did and thought because Mike Tyson did it, that was how the sport was. It wasn't. You know who'll be the first to tell you this? Mike Tyson. Why? Because Tyson is a bigger historian of the sport than probably about 95 to 96% of his fan base put together. He'll even tell you about some of the guys before his time and some of the guys during his time that knew how to deliver. Might want to talk to him about that one. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night. Hope everyone has themselves a rest of the night, a wonderful 30th of April, 2025. May is here, and it starts tomorrow. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. Always take care of yourself first, because if you take care of yourself first, good things come your way. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in life matters. Always take care of yourself first. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and enjoy the evening.